All right, welcome everyone. We appreciate your interest in Yenching Academy and your time as you join us for today's webinar. Let me give you a little bit of an update on how today's webinar will proceed. So first, we're going to start off with a brief overview of the history of sinology and China studies as academic disciplines. I'll give an introduction to Peking University and then go into some significant detail about our program at Yenching Academy. I'll cover the application requirements and timeline, and then we'll be welcoming 3 alumni of Yenching Academy, all from the Asia and Oceania regions, for a panel discussion. We'll cover some of their motivations in applying to the program, their experiences here, what they worked on in terms of research projects, and what they're doing now. We think it's important in these kinds of regionally focused information sessions to give you opportunities to hear thoughts directly from Yenching scholars from your region, and then we'll have time for a Q&A. Now, since today's meeting is a webinar, you will be able to write your questions at any point during today's session in the Q&A function. Either one of my colleagues in YCA's admissions office will answer it directly in the chat function, or will indicate that we will answer your question live. And please feel free to ask questions directed to me, to the admissions staff in general, or to any or all of the YCA alumni who will be joining us at a later portion in today's webinar. I am Brent Haas. I am Associate Dean and Director of Admission Affairs at Yenching Academy of Peking University, and it's my pleasure to introduce our program to you today. So when we talk about the academic study of China, we generally use 3 main terms: sinology, Chinese studies, sometimes called Chinese language studies, and China studies. Sinology was the earliest method of outsiders understanding Chinese culture, Chinese civilization, history, and literature. And it was heavily focused on philological research. This is a form of linguistic research, delving into the written classics of Chinese civilization, as well as the centuries of collected commentaries and re-edited versions of those classics. Sinology as an academic calling and as a profession required a deep level of understanding of classical and literary Chinese, and it would become institutionalized in European universities in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Chinese studies, at least in its original term, began in 19th century Europe to serve the needs of missionaries, of overseas consular officials, as well as the increasing number of longtime residents and traders based in the Qing dynasty coastal cities and later in treaty ports. This field of study in its earliest form emphasized spoken Chinese, including many regional dialects. Those dialects tended to be focused on the areas around treaty ports, or in the areas where Western consuls and Western missionaries and traders were located, and was intended to help them engage in conversation with Qing dynasty officials and with local Chinese in the areas where they were located. We often still hear Chinese studies used, sometimes almost in the same way that the final category that I'm going to emphasize, China studies, is used. So China studies developed in conjunction with the area studies model of understanding regional cultures and civilizations outside of Europe and North America. This was part of the global Cold War in the second half of the 20th century. And the research agenda turned its focus from historical or so-called traditional China to what was defined as contemporary China, China of the 1950s and onward. One of the major innovations in the area studies model of China studies was to integrate the cutting edge of theoretical and methodological research approaches from other humanities and mainly social scientific academic disciplines. Missionaries have a very problematic legacy in the histories of Western imperialism, colonialism, and in general, Western interactions with other civilizations and other regions around the world. That is something that certainly can't and should not be denied. However, in the growth of sinology as an academic discipline, missionaries' contributions were very significant. From the earliest Catholic missionaries in the 16th century, the Jesuit missionaries led by, and most notably defined by the gentleman you see on the left, Matteo Ricci, all the way to the first chair of Chinese language and literature at Oxford University, a Scottish Protestant missionary, James Legge. You see missionaries, long-time residents in China, their Chinese language capabilities, both at the classical, literary, and spoken levels, and some of the early work that they did in compiling dictionaries, in translating Chinese classics, in translating the dynastic histories. You see them occupying a very significant role in transmitting high-level academic quality knowledge production about Chinese civilization to, in Matteo Ricci's situation, the Latin reading audience, or in James Legge's, in the late 19th century, the English reading audience. So despite the certainly problematic legacies of the missionary enterprise as a whole, when we academic field are significant. Chinese language training and the professionalization of academic sinology really have their origins in France in the 19th century. Chinese was first taught in Europe, spoken Chinese was first taught in Europe in 1843 at what is now known as ENALCO. It was a language training university for French officials, missionaries, and as well traders and some academics. Sinology as a professional academic field wouldn't develop until the very end of the 19th century, and with a group of what has been called a trio of giants of French sinology, with, we can see Edouard Chavannes, Paul Pilliot, and Henri Maspero. Here you see pictured is Edouard Chavannes. They were bringing the cutting edge of philological, sort of linguistic research techniques to the received texts of Chinese history and tradition. And although they're considered the founders of modern sinology, each of those important scholars also branched off into other humanities and even some social scientific fields as they were in the early stages of their development. So even these three giants of French sinology were also engaged in interdisciplinary, for lack of a better term at this time period, interdisciplinary research on China. The area studies model and its fundamental shift to how China was studied beginning in the US, but then later spreading to Europe and other places around the world, really starts in the post-World War II, Cold War era of US academic history. I think it's safe to say that the godfather of China studies in the US is the gentleman pictured here on the left, John King Fairbank, an American historian of China at Harvard University. He really revolutionized the academic study of China. He integrated contemporary language study from the tradition of Chinese quote unquote language studies and training in social scientific disciplines, and emphasized his graduate students and later young professors' research agendas. China continued to be the point or the object of their research and teaching agendas, but instead of China as being defined as the Confucian classics, the dynastic histories, medieval and pre-modern Chinese literature, sort of the humanistic study of China, it was taken to be post-1949 China, looking at the nation state of the PRC from interdisciplinary social, scientific, and historical lenses. And area studies became the dominant model for Western academics to engage with other regions and civilizations around the world. Now, obviously, area studies has been criticized over the last several decades for its connection to Cold War era national strategic interest in the US and in Western Europe. But again, when we limit our discussion to the academic study of China, area studies, I think we can say has become probably the most significant model for outsiders understanding China through academic research in the last 60 years. Now, institutional research on China today, broadly speaking, can be summarized on the following points. Sinology as an academic discipline still remains perhaps not prominent, but certainly active in institutions of higher education, mainly in continental Europe. We do see some interesting developments in what might be called a new sinology, taking place in Australian universities as well today. The study and research of Chinese language and civilization, or Chinese language and culture, in most cases takes place in institutions or departments, generally called something along the lines of East Asian languages and cultures, or East Asian languages and civilizations. Area studies focusing on China or Asia as their regional focus take place in institutes of China studies, Asian studies, as well as in many different academic departments. And at both the undergraduate and graduate level, China is often studied as a subfield within a social scientific or humanities discipline. So there might be a department of history that has a regional focus on East Asia, or a department of political science with a regional focus on China specifically. And of course, you have policy and strategic analysis taking place in think tanks all around the world, as well as an interesting thing to consider is Confucius Institutes, mainly focused on Chinese language education, but with some introductory cultural education as well. I think scholars are still working to determine whether and or how, to what extent, Confucius Institutes should be incorporated into the history of academic study of China. And so at this point, having sort of wrapped up a very, very brief narrative of the history of sinology and China studies, it's important to ask what's missing from this narrative, this standard narrative. Well, a lot is missing from the standard narrative. One thing in particular that's missing are different regional or national traditions of sinology and China studies. Some of those can be emphasized in the Netherlands. They could be emphasized in Russia and the Soviet Union, which was one of the earliest contacts with the Qing dynasty and developed their own national interest or imperial interest-based academic study of China. What else focus other regions outside of broadly defined the West? East Asian traditions of first Chinese learning, and then sinology, and then area studies of China are incredibly significant. One notable tradition is the Japanese tradition of sinology, coming from Kangaku, sort of Chinese studies, or to different definitions of sinology, largely defined by the work done by scholars at Kyoto University, beginning with Naito Konan, and Tokyo University. I think we could, say has one of the most significant East Asian traditions of sinological or China-focused area studies research. Korea has similar traditions, as well as overseas Chinese communities in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, and of course in Australia. India as well has a important but perhaps less influential tradition of studying China from the perspective of being one of China's sort of southwestern neighbors across the Himalayas. So there's a lot of institutional and regional histories that aren't included in this rough narrative of the history of sinology and China studies, but are equally as important and have recently become objects of academic research in and of themselves, and the field is better because of it. One other important part of the history of sinology and China studies are Chinese own intellectual engagements with first their own received texts of Chinese tradition. We can think first of the evidential scholarship movement, the Kaozhengxue of the 17th, 18th, and somewhat in the 19th century. We can think of in the post-May 4th era in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, how Chinese academics responded to developments in European sinology and Western China studies to build up their own institutions and departments of social scientific and humanities-based research at universities. We can think of the national learning, the Guoxue movement in both the 1930s, 40s, as well as the 1990s and early 2000s. So what does China studies by Chinese and or in China look like? And this is one of the important things that the Yenching Academy of Peking University is involved in. We are trying to experiment in and develop a tradition of academic research in China studies, blending humanities and social scientific disciplines at China's top university. Peking University was founded as the Jingshi Daxuetang, Imperial University of Peking, in 1898. You can see one section of our campus here on the right. If you're familiar with Beijing, we are located in the northwestern area, just outside of the northwestern Fourth Ring Road in the city. We have an absolutely stunning campus. In the bottom left, you can see Weiming Lake, which is a lovely place for a stroll, especially this part of the year during autumn, as the ginkgo trees are just beginning to turn a lovely shade of yellow. Jingnan Courtyard is a significant, historically and culturally significant section of PKU's campus. It is also where the Yenching Academy has our office building, as well as our teaching building and our large multimedia lecture hall and event space. PKU today has 11,000, roughly 700 faculty members that are divided into 51 different schools and departments, as well as 10 national key laboratories. This faculty, along with the administrative staff at the university, serve 46,000 full-time students and 4,400 international students. Mentioning international students, I think it's very important to emphasize at the beginning of today's presentation that after 2.5 long years of travel controls into mainland China, brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic, beginning in the fall of 2022, this semester, visas are open for international Yenching scholars. We already have about 60 international Yenching scholars who are on campus with us, or perhaps have already landed in China and are in the process of going through their quarantine and transition period process to campus. We expect to have over 90% of our international Yenching scholars in the 2022 8th cohort with us by the end of the fall semester. Very exciting news, and I want to make sure that I emphasize this to all of you who might be considering applying. International scholars can now join us on campus. So what is the Yenching Academy? Well, simply put, we are a 2-year fully funded master's program in interdisciplinary China studies. We explore today's China, its history, the developments, especially over the last 30 or 40 years, how those developments have reshaped life in China, economically, culturally, socially, etc., and how those domestic changes have altered China's role in the world. I have taught 4 or 5 classes of Yenching scholars. I've run the admissions program for the last several years. This is now my 4th round of running the admissions program, and I personally assure you that those who join us in the program are outstanding young people, are fascinating young scholars, and will go on to influential careers. And as I mentioned a couple of times, we really are focused on bringing the best practices of interdisciplinary teaching and interdisciplinary research to the already fully formed system of graduate education in China. We are a sort of residential program in the first year. All international Yenching scholars live on campus in the Yenching Academy House for their first year. Scholars from the Chinese mainland, from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan are required to be on campus for both years. International scholars have the option of living off campus in Beijing for their second year. The language of instruction is English. No prior Chinese language proficiency is required for admission. However, since we are a highly competitive graduate program in China studies, if you have Chinese language fluency, if you're a native speaker, if you have experience in the academic study of China or experience living, studying, working here, I recommend that you emphasize that in your application materials. It can be a competitive advantage. We also encourage our scholars to branch out of the academic offerings at YCA into the broader PKU community. We encourage them to take courses in other departments and schools, whether it's offered in English or if someone is a near native level speaker of Chinese, they can take courses for credit taught in Chinese around the university. Let's talk funding. The Yenching Academy Fellowship is a 2-year fellowship with an academic performance review at the end of the first year. The fellowship covers tuition payments, covers accommodation in our dormitory in year 1 and year 2, depending on if you are where you're from. If you're an international scholar who lives off campus in year 2, we offer a housing stipend of 3,000 renminbi per month, enough to pay for a private room in a shared apartment, but not really enough for your own private apartment, considering the cost of rent in Beijing. We offer a monthly stipend also of 3,000 renminbi per month, round-trip travel from your home base to and from Beijing in year 1, and then medical insurance that's offered. It's a standard package for international students living and studying in China. So think of us as a 2-year fully funded program, but at the end of the first year, after completing all of your coursework, we conduct an academic performance review. We have clearly defined standards like a certain number of course credits, maintaining a certain minimum GPA, not failing any of the core curriculum courses. As long as you meet those standards, you will receive funding for the second year. There's plenty of other funding opportunities. Dean's Research Grant for independent research in your first year. For scholars from East Asia and Southeast Asia, there's also another funding opportunity, the Baixian Fellowship. So there's a lot going on in the first year for extra funding. And in year 2, you can get fellowships for continued intensive language study. You can also serve in roles like a teaching assistantship, residential advisor, etc. Now, this is an important slide, so I'm going to have to spend a few minutes on it here. Part of how we are defining China studies, interdisciplinary China studies within the regulations and degrees recognized by China's Ministry of Education is what might be called China studies within the disciplines, or the disciplines within China studies. These research areas are important to your academic experience here in 3 ways. The first, at the admission stage. The second, when you choose a thesis advisor at the end of your first year. And third, when you graduate. When you apply to YCA, you need to choose one of these 6 research areas in which to conduct your master's thesis research. When we review your application, we'll look at all of your materials, try to get a well-rounded picture of who you are as a person and as a young scholar, but we'll also particularly pay attention to your previous academic training, your degree or degrees, research projects you may have done, internships you may have had, professional experience, any publications you may have, with a view to assessing whether or not you are sufficiently prepared to conduct graduate level research at China's top university in the field to which you're applying. So if you are applying to economics and management and you've never taken microeconomics, macroeconomics, statistical analysis, well, then that might raise some red flags. It's not prohibitive necessarily, but if your degree or degrees don't easily match up to the research area to which you're applying, anticipate that we'll have some questions about that and try to address our questions in your application materials. Secondly, you will need to choose a thesis advisor from one of the fields or departments or schools in which your research area, in the research area which you have chosen. So if you are in China Studies, Law and Society, if you're wanting to do a legal, sort of a law-focused, say you want to study the reforms to the Chinese judiciary over the last 20 years, then it makes sense that you'll need a professor from the School of Law to be your thesis advisor. If you're looking at demographic changes and the aging Chinese population, then you probably would need someone from the Department of Sociology. And then finally, when you graduate, this is what will appear on your diploma. It will say, for instance, Peking University, Master of Economics, China Studies, Economics and Management. Peking University, Master of History, China Studies, History and Archaeology. Very briefly, on the upper left, you can see our core courses that all Yenching scholars take together in the first year they are with us. China in Transition 1 and 2 is an interdisciplinary look at contemporary China. The fall is co-taught by leading faculty at Peking University. It's organized in large lectures plus immediate breakout discussion sections. The spring is organized and taught individually by the same professors who co-taught the fall, but that is more of a field research focused course. You choose a course from the professor whose research area matches yours, and then you, under their guidance, get experience doing field research in the spring semester. Field study is a week-long intensive travel learning experience with assigned readings, lectures, as well as the goal of that is to really take learning outside of the classroom and outside of Beijing itself. The China Studies Lecture Series brings in leading academics, artists, politicians, business leaders over the course of your first academic year to share their research interests, their career advice, their experiences in their life and in their careers. And academic writing gives you step-by-step guidance in the process, conceptualizing, carrying out, writing up, and defending a master's thesis at Peking University. All international students are required to take Chinese language unless you have completed and passed the HSK level 6 within the last 2 years. You can then place out of the Chinese as a second language requirement, but you still have to fulfill the same number of academic course credits. And we recommend you do so in Chinese, at least one Chinese taught course in other schools or departments at the university. These next two slides are the elective courses that are on offer at YCA in the 2022-2023 academic year. This is just Yenching Academy courses. This is not PKU courses. And I want to emphasize that despite the slide being organized in columns defined by a research area, you can and are encouraged to take any elective course that you're interested in across the research areas. We are an interdisciplinary program, and we do not limit you to elective courses only in the research area that you have chosen. Here are the courses on offer this academic year in the broadly defined humanities. I am currently teaching history of the field, sinology, and China studies from a global perspective, and then I'll be teaching a modern Chinese history seminar in the spring of next year, along with the critical thinking and academic writing general elective course that was on a few slides ago. Our academic advisor system is quite unique in the graduate system of education in China. Most Yenching scholars have two academic advisors over the course of their 2 years in the program. The first year is a faculty advisor who's there to help you select courses, get to know the faculty community, and introduce other faculty members that might be good sources of guidance and advice as you develop your thesis research topic. And in year 2, it's a thesis advisor. I think you should all be familiar of the role that a thesis advisor would play. So we have over 140 academic advisors who are from these 24 different schools or departments at PKU. Here you can see a couple of shots of our fall field study. Last few years, we've been going to Chengdu in Sichuan province, and as well as a little bit of the outskirts of Chongqing municipality. Yes, you see the pandas. Yes, you eat Sichuan cuisine, but we also visit high-tech firms, the newly built airport, learn about urban planning in Chengdu. We go to the Sanxingdui archaeological site, but not only go to the museum that any tourist can go to, we get to go into the actual excavation site and have Peking University archaeologists introduce their work. The spring, China Studies Part 2, the field research component of the course, you can see pre-pandemic, we were sending out multiple groups of students all over China to cities, regions, counties to conduct field research as part of their core course. Our colleagues in the Student Affairs Office also offers a series of extracurricular activities to help you train yourself in leadership, to help you build towards making the right choices in your career. We utilize the developing and increasingly influential network of Yenching Academy alumni. We've also just instituted a professional advisor system where you can choose someone generally based in Beijing for logistical convenience to help advise you on taking the next step in your careers. And after graduation, Yenching scholars are quite successful in taking the next step in their careers. About 20% or slightly more go on to further graduate education at top universities around the world, generally at the doctoral level, but also perhaps law school, med school, what have you. Then you can see some of the international organizations, consulting firms, financial institutions, et cetera, where Yenching scholars who choose a professional path immediately upon graduation have recently found gainful employment. So far it's all been academics and very, very hard focus on the structure of the program. I want you also to think of YCA as a platform, a platform for you to bring your personality, your interest in better and understanding China, your unique skill set, whether it's academic, professional, or what have you, interact with other brilliant young scholars, find ways to collaborate and create something new. This multimedia, art, history, sculpture, and research exhibition called Through Our Door is one such creation of Yenching scholars in the 2020 to 2021 academic year. If you're interested, it's a really fantastic exhibition. You can scan this QR code for a VR tour that locates the space of Jingyuan Courtyard 4, our teaching building, and the former women's dormitory for a university that used to be here through the 1920s to the 1940s. It's really an exceptional event. Yenching scholars thought it up, made proposals, applied for funding, and made something that was really lasting and wonderful. That's also how the Yenching Global Symposium, our flagship extracurricular event, was created as well. Yenching scholars in the first cohort got together, brainstormed doing an international China Studies conference focused on young delegates or delegates at the early stages of their careers, came to the administration with a proposal, and YGS was born. From students thinking of something creative and interesting to do, Yenching Global Symposium has now become a flagship institution at YCA, and first-year Yenching scholars are invited to volunteer their time on the executive committee to help run this conference. This is student-run, student-led, and even conceptualized by the students. Now, in the 8 cohorts of Yenching scholars since 2015, we've had 860 people from 84 different countries and regions around the world. Asia, broadly defined, has the highest number of Yenching scholars, followed by North America, Europe. Obviously, we have some room to improve on our recruitment in South America and in Africa, and we're working on doing so. In the first 8 cohorts of Yenching scholars, we've had scholars who graduated from roughly 350 top universities around the world. What you can see here are the universities that have placed the highest number of graduates in our program over the first 8 cohorts of Yenching scholars. Most Yenching scholars' highest academic degree is a bachelor's degree, although we do welcome and every year admit about 20% of our students who already have postgraduate degrees, master's degree, law degree, MBA, what have you. And the research areas at YCA. This is the breakdown of research areas selected by the most competitive scholars in any given year. Obviously, politics and international relations, economics and management, and then law and society are the far and away the 3 most popular. Humanities research areas take up about roughly 20% of the selections of Yenching scholars over the first 8 cohorts. I want to emphasize, we don't have a quota. This is not planned. I would personally prefer to see a more even spread of research areas, but we want Yenching scholars to study what they're interested in. And we also want to ensure that those who are admitted to the program have sufficient academic training in the research area in order to have a good degree, sort of a guarantee of success at Peking University. Okay, so what are we looking for? Well, we are we expect academic excellence from Yenching scholars when they're here with us. So we look for an outstanding academic record. This is quite important. We are a competitive, fully funded graduate program. That having been said, we don't have a minimum GPA. In order to be considered, it's not that you have to be first class with honors, first class honors with distinction, or you can't get in. There's not 3.9 or above out of 4, but we do look for academic excellence. We also look for, leadership experience. We look for extracurricular activities that are important to you. Are you an artist, a musician? Have you started your own company? Are you an athlete? These are things that are important to us trying to understand who our applicants are as individuals, but also how you might be able to contribute to our community outside of the classroom. We value students who have cultural diversity in their personal experience or intercultural communication, or at least a commitment to multiculturalism and communicating across cultures. This is very practical. We are a diverse multicultural student body. And so this is an important part of the attraction to apply to YCA. It's also something that we need to look for in your application materials. And we're a China Studies program. So we need, we value students who have a demonstrated interest or perhaps experience in the academic study of China. You do not have to have a China Studies degree to get into the program, but we do need to see a sense of why you're interested in studying China. And then just like any grad school application, you need to give us a well-articulated reason for why you want to come to study in China in general, but also to come study at YCA. And English proficiency is required. Okay, we essentially have sort of three different application tracks to the program. International students is one, applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan is another, and then mainland Chinese students or Chinese citizens. For mainland Chinese students and Chinese citizens, the only way you can currently apply to the program is through what's known as the exemption from the National Postgraduate Entrance Examination, or TUEMIAN. That means you have to have attended or be attending a bachelor's program at a university in mainland China, and through your academic performance, GPA, class ranking, recommendation letters, et cetera, qualify for direct application to YCA, and then we review those applications. International applicants apply directly to the Yenching Academy's online application website, and I'll give you all the details about that coming up next. Applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan do two applications, one to the YCA application portal, just like international students do, but also they must apply to the Peking University Graduate School application portal. And there's a specific application portal for candidates from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. So they essentially send their applications to two different application systems. The minimum requirement for being considered for admission is completing a bachelor's degree before August 31st of next year. Essentially, you can't go to grad school until you've finished college. Okay, application timeline for international candidates is the deadline is November 27th, 2022. Unless you are a current student or alumni from one of our partner universities around the world. You can go to our website and see which universities are partners of YCA. If you are a student from or an alumni from a partner university, you apply first to the partner university, and the first round of admissions review takes place on their campus. Please go to our website, which I'll show the webpage, the link for coming up, to make sure that you are, whether or not you are from a partner school. If you're not, submit your application by noon Beijing time on Sunday, November 27th, 2022. Complete the online application form you see there, yenchingacademy.netapply.cn. We need a certificate of English proficiency for non-native English speakers, unless you are enrolled or have graduated from an English taught degree program. We need to see certificates of enrollment if you are currently enrolled and not yet graduated, and or diplomas from all degree granting institutions of higher education from which you've graduated. We need your official transcripts from your bachelor's program and or other graduate programs. We need a personal statement in English, maximum 750 words. This is your standard grad school application program, or essay, pardon me. Who you are, why you're interested in China, why you're interested in YCA, how you can contribute to the program, where you think you're going in your career, maybe, how you think we can help you achieve those goals. We also have a 1,500 word in English, excluding citations, statement of research interest. This is a sort of broader, more free form of a research proposal. We want to know, this is essentially your academic or research focused self-introduction to the faculty at Yenching Academy. We want to know what you're interested in, what you hope to explore from a research perspective while you're with us at YCA. It should be about what you think your master's thesis research topic will be, likely will be. You're not committed to your statement of research interest becoming your thesis research topic. But this is a formal piece of academic writing. You should use formal academic language. Just like any grad school application, you should contextualize your discussion of your potential research topics within the relevant academic literature in the field or fields that are connected to your potential topic. Resume or CV, and we need 2 letters of recommendation. They must be academic letters of recommendation, and they must be from associate professors, full professors, or higher. This is PKU standard, and it's generally the standard for all top graduate programs in mainland China. Unfortunately, assistant professors do not qualify. If you have questions about that, you can reach out to us. Okay, for applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, it's essentially the same, but there are a couple of differences to the application requirements. You need to submit to YCA's application portal, but you also need to submit to the PKU application portal, and their deadline tends to be a little bit later. It hasn't been announced yet, but you will need to go to our website to get all of the details. This is very important. You cannot be considered if you don't apply to both of these application portals. The application deadline is a slight difference. The certificate of English proficiency also has a slight difference. You can, if you have already graduated from a degree program, from college or a graduate program, if you've already graduated from a place that teaches in English, your diploma can replace the certificate of English proficiency, your IELTS, TOEFL, or Cambridge test score. If you are a current student and have not yet graduated, then you must submit one of these English proficiency test scores. And then the final distinction is in the letters of recommendation. Still must be academic, still must be associate professor or higher, but they must be in the academic field to which you're applying. So if you're applying to law and society, then it must be from a law school professor or perhaps from a sociologist. If you're applying to economics and management, it needs to be someone who's in the Department of Economics or perhaps in the business school. Those are we've adjusted these requirements for applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan to match the requirements of PKU's graduate school application. Okay, if you have questions, send us an email at yca-admissions@pku.edu.cn. You can see our website there in Chinese at yenching.pku.edu.cn or in English at yenchingacademy.pku.edu.cn. You can find us on the standard international or Chinese social media sites. There you go. I appreciate your time and your patience and your focus. Now I'm going to have another sip of my coffee. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then we're going to move over into the next segment of today's webinar, and that is the Q&A, or the discussion with alumni of Yenching Academy. So yeah, Kwok, Nan, Aki, great to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's see. I think Kwok, you were a 2016 cohorter.
Yes, I am. Yeah, second cohort, 2016.
Second cohort. Excellent. Well, how about while I have a sip of my coffee and a sip of water, could we just do a really, really brief self-introduction for each of you? Just briefly introduce yourself so our attendees can get a basic sense of who you are, and then we'll start the discussion.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name is Quốc. I'm from Hanoi, Vietnam. I was a YCA scholar back in 2016. That was like a second cohort, and after graduation, I graduated in 2018, so it's been a while. So after graduation, I worked at WHO Vietnam, and now I'm the senior political officer at the Australian Embassy in Hanoi, focusing on regional cooperation. And yeah, it's been a while since my graduation, but like I still deeply enjoy talking about my YCA experience, and I hope that today I can have with like any questions that you have and give you some advice. Thank you.
Nan, how about you introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. So I'm in London time, so it's a little bit early for me. So please excuse my sleepy face. So I am Nansa Najo from Myanmar. I think I'm still the only one from Myanmar so far. So it was a great experience in YCA. So I was in the third cohort to 2017, from 2017 to 2019. And then I studied China study with a focus on economics and management. So previously, so actually the Yenching experience has been a really great turning point for my career, because previously I only have a Chinese language bachelor program degree. But then I want to focus more on economic, but because of our rigid education system in Myanmar, I couldn't apply to economic university. But I had a graduate diploma from UK before. So when I attended Yenching, it gave me it gave me a turning point, to a changing major to economic. And then from that point on, I was able to walk in economic field and then in research. So it was a great experience for me, and I hope you all apply. Thanks.
Thank you. Akihiro, how about you?
Yes. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting. I'm currently in China, which is great. And I'm from Japan, by the way. And then I'm the fifth cohort. So it's still quite young. So from 2019 to 2021, during the very bad COVID time. However, Yenching Academy supported us very well, both for career and student life. So I'm still working in China for a top tier commercial real estate. I'm actually currently in Suzhou for the work and to explore, more China economy, because my major was in economics and management. I think Yenching Academy really helped let's say the foreign student, international student get to know about China and have the opportunity to learn China, study China, and work in China. So I really hope this meeting to the incoming cohorts or potential cohort can really give you guys useful information from an alumni point of view to communicate with the potential cohorts. That's very nice.
All right, thanks, Aki. So I think Nan sort of mentioned a little bit about her motivation for applying to YC and to study in China, but I'd like, Kwok, I'd like to hear from you. What was your general sort of motivation to come to China to study, but also to apply to the Yenching Academy?
So this is actually a random experience, to be honest. I was in Belgium at the time for my study abroad program, and so my host university, KU Leuven, was a partner of YCA. So I saw the advertisement in the building, and I thought I've been very much interested in China's development stories, and I grew up basically watching Chinese dramas. So I have this kind of fondness for the Chinese culture and language. I was doing Chinese language programs back in college as well. So, and I just thought, why not? This is a great opportunity. The program is still very young, and at the time, I remember there's not much on the website even. But what I could sense was the fact that there would be a lot of other international students. So yeah, I just gave it a try.
Thanks. And Nan, you mentioned the differences in, say, your the Myanmar education system maybe wouldn't allow you to study economics and management. So what would you say that you were perhaps more interested in studying economics and management at YCA, or was it sort of China studies plus economics and management? What was sort of your motivation?
So it was actually both, I would say. I was interested in economics. Well, like I want to have a economic degree, well, the ultimate goal. But still, like since I've been studying like Chinese language for the whole like bachelor program, that I also want to know more about like China in a sense. And then the other thing is because Myanmar and China share a very long border, so like I would really, like, and we trade a lot. Well, especially from Myanmar side, we trade a lot with China. So China is like the biggest trading partner from Myanmar. So it's like it would be a very bonus point, like if I get to know more about like the Chinese society, the Chinese culture, from first hand, not just from like like from movie or from study. And the YC experience really proved it's a right choice, that I really get to know more about the people, the culture, and the society itself. So yeah.
Yeah, my wife is from Yunnan province, and so I lived there for several years, and have traveled down to the Myanmar border, down to Rayleigh, a couple of times. So great. I think a lot of students, not just from countries that are directly neighboring China, but a lot of students are interested in YCA because perhaps the economic relationship between China and their home country. We see that with a lot of especially Latin American students, African students who are interested in perhaps being involved in the process of economic relations between China and whatever their home country is. But excellent, thanks. And you had a lot of Chinese language experience. Aki, I know you were studying economics before you were interested in Chinese economics and studying more at YCA. What about your Chinese language experience? Had you studied Chinese before coming to our program?
Yeah, honestly say yeah. So I was studying in a China university before for a bachelor, Tsinghua, and that really, let's say that helped a little bit. But however, because Yenching had this China classes, and that was intense actually, and we have a lot of, because people come in by different Chinese levels, and then however the academy very offer us a very thorough classes from different levels. We have, I think I was in 8, but however, there are like beginner can start from 1 and 2, and then that's really marking to the HSK, the China language level, and then there was I think the office actually invited from the teacher and professor from the foreign language department. So they are very professional, they are very kind. And then with that experience, very helped me to improve my Chinese.
Thanks. Yeah, we contract teachers from the School of Chinese as a Second Language at Peking University, the 对外汉语教育学院. And they give us courses specifically and only for Yenching scholars. So it is at the School of Chinese as a Second Language, but they tailor their courses for our students. I'm glad it was an intense experience for you. Having studied Chinese myself for 20 some years, it is a very intense experience. So now that we've talked about Chinese language learning at YC, I think let's shift over to just what was your life like? Perhaps maybe Kwok, what was your sort of student experience sort of living and studying with us at YCA?
Yeah, so I had an amazing time in Beijing, and a lot of my classmates from the same cohort can testify to that fact. Because of the flexibility of the program, we have like basically like the whole second year dedicated to like our own like project. And a lot of my friends, they moved off the campus to like to have a sense of the city, to explore Beijing more, and to travel more around China. In my case, like I started like an internship at Xiaomi. So I was working at Xiaomi in this Beijing headquarters like for a few months, and that was an amazing experience because like for the first time in my life, I spent like 8 hours in an office, actually more than 8 hours because it was like 996. So like I had a kind of
Oh,
experience.
996.
Yeah. It was tough. Because I was constantly doing my thesis at the same time. I don't know how I managed to like pull it off, but I'm glad that I did. And even like after my summer experience, like like when I returned to Vietnam with that kind of China experience, like I was approached by a lot of like Chinese companies, like my dams, like so that was great. Just to materialize like something that you did like in your like YCA life, like in the second year. Um, but oh, but I also did a lot of traveling. I remember me and my friends like we went to Inner Mongolia like within like a month after arriving in the program. We were scammed. Unfortunately, on that trip, but that's like something that we still like talk about now every time when we have a chance to like meet in person. I actually met a lot of my friends in the States over the summer, and we were still talking about like how bad like that experience was, but ultimately it bonded us like together, and we're still friends after all these years. So there's something like positive out of it.
Bad experiences can become good stories. Well, I'm sorry that happened to you, but I'm glad it's a happy memory. Internships are also an important part of the process here. We encourage and, if possible, support students to do internships in the summer after their first academic year through their second academic year. We think we discourage students from doing internships in year one simply because they have a lot on their plate. But yeah, I'm glad you had an interesting experience. I'm not glad you got scammed, but I'm glad you were able to have direct experiences in China, and those transitioned over to professional experiences and professional opportunities back home. Nan, what about you? How would you sort of summarize your life, your experience at YCA?
I would say the best time of my life, because one thing is I
The
met a
best
lot
time
of
so far. Well,
so
we hope
far,
that
I
you can
guess
still
so
have
far. So far, I mean, like even after a lot, like since I graduated, I've been to many places and like walk in many areas, but still still couldn't beat the YCA experience. So for many reasons, one is YCA family is a very warm, like a society, or like a family. So you live close next to each other, and like Quoc is one of our RA, so like we can always reach out to them like whenever we have problems, like even very small little thing, they were always willing to help. So you don't feel like left alone, or you don't feel like like alone or lonely in big huge city like Beijing. Another thing is it was a coincidence that my best friends from Myanmar are in Beijing. They're studying in other universities, so I had a great time hanging out with them, as well as like meeting new friends and YCA, making new friends. And I still talk to like all these YCA friends. So a few of them visited Myanmar, and I also visited their countries after that. And like after graduating, I when I was working, so these friends also helped me through my careers as well. So yeah, I had a good time. Yeah, the only thing is like
Nice.
I couldn't cook kitchen. We had a kitchen, but I think it was like we didn't use that much, that one. Like I think it was like a little bit far, but I'm not sure how the arrangement is now. But at that time we couldn't cook. That's the only thing. But Shirtangs are very like close to our dorm, so it was okay. Yeah.
A lot of students seem to highlight the cafeterias, the canteens at Peking University
Yes.
as being a very positive side of part of their memory and their experience here. Aki, anything you'd like to share about sort of your overall experience as a Yenching scholar?
Yeah, I mean honestly a lot to share, because as a Asian student we kind of know about China a lot, but however, Yenching is an international program. Like so many people come from different countries and then with different backgrounds. So imagine like 120 students and then all the people are from different countries are like, they always have like different point of view altogether. So many times, actually my favorite class is China in transition. So we have a lot of panel discussions and then we share a lot of deep, point of views towards some topics in China. And then that class is so fun and so interesting because you think you know about China and from your country point of view, but however, like people from US, people from Europe, from Africa, Latin America, they always share their understandings. And then that was very interesting to have discussion on like these specific issues. And also it's very interesting to connecting them even after the Yenching program. I mean, currently I'm like working in China, but I also heard quite many scholars actually come back to China to work. And that moment and that reunion in China was very exciting. And then that I would say all my friends, all my cohorts are my treasures for my life.
Oh, nice. So where are you based in China? I know you're in Suzhou right now, but are you live and working in Suzhou?
Nah, Suzhou is only a couple of days, and then I'm based in Beijing, in Chaoyang, near to Guomao. So I
that's
really,
very close to
yeah,
where I live.
yeah. Oh, really?
Okay.
We should have a cup of coffee
Yeah,
then.
sounds good. I'm at the west gate of Chaoyang Park, so I'm a little bit north
Oh,
of the
yeah.
Guomao area. Okay, so I'd like to hear a little bit about your thesis advisors and your process experience in writing the thesis. What was your topic? Who was your advisor? And what would you like to share? Any of you who would like to tell us a little bit about their thesis work at YCA? Well, Kwok is the only one whose microphone isn't muted at the moment. Was there anything you'd like to share about your thesis advisor and your thesis topic?
Yeah, so that I mean, for me, like the thesis process was pretty straightforward. So I worked with Professor Chang Chengdong for my China transition project. So I wanted to do like a small study on NGOs in China, and I wanted to compare like the NGO scene in China and Vietnam. And yeah, I did like part of like my thesis during my China transition project, and afterwards I just thought I wanted to develop this project further. And now that I have this like very good thesis advisor who's like very responsive and knowledgeable, and I'm just gonna like keep like going down that direction. So yeah, so for me, like I didn't have to go around and like and ask like people to become my advisor. My advisor is always like was always there. And fun fact, when I was in Boston over the summer, like I ran into him at Harvard. Like I was just there, like visiting friends, and I was like, wait a second, I know that guy over there. Like, so he was there. Like,
what a nice
he's
reunion.
yeah, like he's now at the Harvard Yenching Institute as a visiting scholar for this academic year, I believe.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's good. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we structure China in transition that way. So it's co-taught by PKU faculty, so you can get a sense of some of the leading faculty at different departments and schools. It's wonderful that you were able to find your thesis advisor and, in a sense, your thesis project in China in transition. I don't think that is always the case, and it doesn't have to be the case for Yenching scholars. And I'd also like to emphasize your thesis was comparing the status and situations for NGOs in China and Vietnam. And for those of us who are joining us in today's webinar, watching the video online, these kinds of comparative thesis topics are certainly valid and they're welcomed. So, you can consider China and blank comparative studies as a very valid and potential thesis topic as well. So Aki or Nan, would either of you one of you like to share your experience with your thesis and your thesis advisor?
Aki, do you want to go or shall I?
You can.
Oh, okay. So first, I take a few classes from Guanghua, and I was like more interested to work on some economics and management project. So I chose Professor Lei Xiaoyan from Guanghua University of Finance department, and my thesis was a comparative study as well. It was a comparative study of Chinese mobile payment development in China, and also like the potential in Myanmar. So basically, well, at that time, it was like the height of mobile payment like in China, and then in other country, in other part of the world, like there are not much development at that time. So it was very interesting for me. Like when I get to China, the first thing is you have to get a Yenching payment or like Alipay. That is the first thing that like make me like very interested. Oh wow, this is like really revolutionizing the whole like lifestyle. So yeah, it kind of got me interested. And then actually because of that research, I get to talk to a lot of like financier in Myanmar. And then I was talking to like head of a major bank in Myanmar. And then I get a meeting with their HR director. And then like they offered me a job later, but I decided not to go later. Yeah, and I decided to go for a different one. So it, in a way, it was like very like when you choose a research topic, you have to make it like strategic. You have to be more strategic, like where you want to go after that. So it will be really helpful. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. Strategic choice of your research topic. I mean, there are a lot of ways to approach that. I mean, if you are potentially someone who wants to continue on the academic path to the doctoral level and be a researcher or a professor in the future, it is important to what your master's thesis topic will be. Now, if you're applying for doctoral programs right out of YCA, so you'd be applying in the year that you're researching and writing your thesis, you won't have it completed yet, but the way you develop your thesis and talk about it in your application materials will be very, very essential. And the thesis topic you choose can help you get into certain programs or work with certain professors who maybe share those research interests. If you're looking for a more professional career, we have a lot of students who express interest in a research topic when they come into the program in their application stage. Like for instance, maybe someone is trained in AI, big data, and sort of the regulatory frameworks around big data in Europe and America, but they don't know enough about big data, AI, and the sort of regulation of it in China. So they will often apply saying, I know all of this stuff about big data and AI in the US, perhaps. I want to use my time at YCA and my thesis to learn about it in China because I want to go on to be, work for an international organization trying to set up global governance structures on AI and big data. So it can be that clear of a line from application to graduation to career. It doesn't have to be, but I think Nan's advice, her experience is good for you to think about how you might best utilize a potential thesis topic to set yourself up for the next stage in your career, whether it's academic or whether it's going directly into the professional, realm. I'm curious to switch up a little bit. I'm curious about, let's see, so Nan or Aki, what kinds of experiences did you have interacting with other students from East Asia, Southeast Asia, in either YCA or perhaps even in the broader Peking University community? Aki, do you have any thoughts on that?
Right. So let's say because I'm from Japan, there's a lot of like a big Japanese population in Beijing, and they have a let's say embassy event for example, or like a business meetings, and that very, you know, open your eyes, because you see your community actually have very deep roots in Beijing, because, you know, Beijing actually is the capital of China. So all the economy or all the informations actually have a lot of association with this city. So besides that, also the university also have like association of Japanese students, and sometimes we play like football together, sometimes we like speaking Japanese. So I would say, like, because of Peking University is so famous around the world, it definitely have some like a student from back from your country, or like from like East Asian areas. So I would say that very help you to, you know, have like a base in a foreign country, and that really help you to developing your own interests in, you know, some city you never been before. So I think that really helps. So the experience was nice.
Oh, great. I live very close to the Japanese embassy and to some of the major sort of Japanese food and beverage areas in Beijing. That's also lovely. I could walk there in 10 minutes right now, in fact. Now, Nan, aside from a couple of your really close friends who happen to be studying at universities in Beijing, did you have any other interactions, perhaps at PKU or in the broader, you know, city community with you know, with others from Myanmar or maybe Southeast Asia?
I do. Actually, I had more like chance to meet more Burmese students in other university in Beijing. So actually, there are not many students in like PKU, but there are more students in BLCU, which is like very close to like
That's Beijing
PKU.
Language and Culture University.
Yeah, so many students like focus their like China study or Chinese study, or like Chinese language studies there. So like I made a lot of friends there. Another thing is like I think in Yenching at that time we had a lunch with Pengyu, like a club activity. So a lot of like PKU students came there to talk with YCA students in English, and then I got a few friends, like one Chinese friend, and we talk like every week. Like it's like a 2-hour session. So 1 hour we talk in English and 1 hour we talk in like Chinese, like to help improve each other's language. It's kind of like a fun way to like meet more people, and yeah, like for a wider PKU student body. Actually, my friend from Vietnam, like Trang, has more opportunity to meet more PKU student because she attended like PKU classes, so she meet more new like PKU student from like from Asian countries.
Yeah, you know, it's wonderful when Yenching scholars really branch out into the broader PKU student community. But it's, you don't have to. I mean, some people have a different, you know, there are different paths that people can take at YCA. Some are very laser focused on their studies, their research, and going to grad school. Some are very focused on getting to know as many people and getting as getting as deeply involved in the YCA student community. There's so much going on just within YCA. That's perfectly fine too. Some come here and say, you know, I sort of want to get outside of the YCA community and really integrate into the PKU student community. And some are like, I want to, you know, be as connected as I can to, you know, my country's embassy or to the business community of you know, Japanese or whoever in the city. This isn't a one size fits all program, and you can make your own path in it. And each way is certainly equally valid. So what about since you've all graduated, what about your connections with the YCA Alumni Network? We've been working on setting up regional secretaries and trying to really intensify the alumni-led engagement in different regional communities around the world. Who has had any experience with the YCA alumni or some events, perhaps? Anyone have it? Go ahead, Ani.
Yeah, because I think I'm the China region for the alumni secretary. So I basically organize a alumni event in Beijing. I think that was very let's say everyone was emotional because of the pandemic, whatever reasons. It was not easy to gathering like 40, 50 of Yenching alumni all together.
Yeah.
So I managed a restaurant, a nice restaurant, and then we kind of enjoying the food and then like talking with the alumni we haven't met for a long time, and then I think some of the scholars actually flew to Beijing from other city because of this event. And we share the contact, some people are new, some people are like haven't seen each other for a long time. And that was very, kind of useful from like call out the memories, for example, or like to discuss for the work related stuff. And, it's huge networks as a Yenching alumni. I think from other countries, I also see the people like taking photo of alumni in UK, alumni in New York. So I think this, network or family kind of feelings is very different from any other program. I think I was lucky.
Nice. Kwok, is there something you wanted to add on this?
Yeah, sure. I think I sent the admission notes office like a few photos. So if they can be shown like on the stream, that'd be great. Because basically they epitomize like the whole like YCA fam like mentality. Can we see like the photos? No. Okay.
I'm sorry, like I don't have them set up and ready.
All right, that's
I'll
fine.
have, if my colleague in the admissions office has it, then send me a message and let me know. But please go ahead. Tell me what you were.
Yeah, I mean, like I haven't attended like any like formal like official YCA alumni events, because I think like that's like a new initiative, and and up until this May there were still travel restrictions in Vietnam. So but right after the restrictions was removed, I went to the States like for my vacation in the summer. I spent like 3 weeks there, and in every single city that I went to, there's like a huge YCA community there. So I was in Boston, New York, and DC, and I feel like like every day there was like a reunion. There's just like so many YCA people there, and again, like that's something that's like so special and unique about this program. 40 years after graduation, you're still friends, and people like fly in like from France, like from different parts of the world, to meet up with you in New York. So that's something that is like unrivaled.
That's great. I mean, these friends that you make in international sort of overseas intensive academic programs it's such a compressed, intense experience that you develop a depth to your relationships, I think, much more quickly than perhaps you do in other situations. And yeah, they really can last a lifetime. I have my own experiences from, a while ago, not, much earlier than say the second cohort, but they are special kinds of friendships that can develop. So I think as we need to move to wrapping up the discussion and to answer any questions. I see one question in the Q&A function. We'll get to that after this last series of responses from our alumni. If you have any other questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A. But I would like to hear from each of you. What advice would you have for someone who is applying to Yenching Academy? Any special wisdom or strategies that you learned in all of your successful applications? Kwok, is there anything? We'll start maybe, if you don't mind, let's do in the order of admission and graduation from YCA. let's respect some
Only-
seniority here.
I feel like I'm so old now. Like,
You
so
have no sympathy from me, my friend.
So I mean, of course, like, you know, the admissions process has changed so much since I applied. But what I can tell people is that just like go back to their resume and like review like relevant experiences, and try to understand like what you really want to get out of the program. Like, why do you want to go to China? Like, that's the most important question, like for both like them and also like for the admissions committee, in my opinion. And yeah, and then for like the whole YC experience, just be open to any possibilities. But just know what you want like before going to Beijing, because I know that I mean, some classmates of mine, they went to Beijing with like no preparation, and that could be like a pretty like hard transition, and they may hate the program afterwards. So yeah, just think deeply about what you want to get out of the program. And yeah, while at YCA, obviously like you have your own like focus, but also be open to meet with like a lot of like other students like from PKU. Like for example, like the other day I met a diplomat at the Japanese embassy, and we actually did a class together at YCA. So you never know what's going to happen in the future.
All right, thanks, Kwok. And I think the multiple paths that you can take at YCA, the sort of interdisciplinary freedom, the, you know, do you want to do internships? Do you want to just focus on research and language learning? That all the paths that are open to you does mean that you can get more out of it if you have a sense of what you want to do when you come into the program. I think that's very good advice. Thanks for that. Nan, what about you? What advice would you give to a potential applicant?
So when I did my application to YCA, so I also attended info session in Myanmar. So at that time, I note down a lot of things like the uniqueness of YCA, and then how it fit with my life at that time. So I mean, like all the applicants who apply to YCA are like very like academically very strong. So you have to show like what you bring to the table, what's your uniqueness, right? So that's, I think you have to highlight that in your essay. So essay is one of the most important part of your application. So in that essay, you have to tell a coherent like story, how you fit into the YCA like characteristic, and you know, like China study characteristic. So I think it will be a selling point. And then maybe also like your CV reflects, you know, like how like your essay is as well, like how the past, what is the past, like what you did. And then in the essay, you can also add like what your future will look like, or what you want to be, you know, in the future. So I think it will be a coherent like story, and it will be a selling point for you.
Thanks, Nan. A couple of points that I want to follow up on, because they're very important ones. Remember, now we have two essays. We have the personal statement and the statement of research interest. So essentially, we've given you more space to go into more depth about it. But between your, you know, the things that you directly control in the essay, not in the application, not including your recommendation letters, your personal statement, your statement of research interest, and your CV. They obviously are going to reflect the same person, the same applicant, but you should try to emphasize different aspects of your application profile in each one of those documents. Don't, and this applies to YCA, but all grad school or all serious job applications, do not repeat yours. Don't, you know, read out your CV in your personal statement. You know, you want to emphasize different aspects of you as an applicant and you as a young scholar and as an individual. I think that's very, very good advice. So wanted to mention, remember, two essays, but also, yeah, emphasize different parts. But there is a sort of, you want to present a narrative. You want to get us a sense of, oh, that makes sense why she is coming from, this country, this academic training and internship experience, why she wants to study in China at YCA, where she hopes to go in her career, and how she thinks YCA can help her get there. I think that's very good advice. Thank you, Nan. Aki, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just briefly saying, because maybe one tip, because you guys already talk a lot about ways. So maybe if you can try to networking with one of the alumni from your country or from your university. So for me, I was actually talking to Kazuki from Japan, and he really helped me to get to know about like this program and like what I have to prepare before I going in. So maybe a quick way that's you can connecting on the Facebook if you can, or maybe LinkedIn. I think both are very useful.
Excellent advice, Aki. Thank you for that. In general, we don't share personal contact information of Yenching scholars just out of privacy concerns. So if you don't ask the admissions office for that, because that's not something that we are, that's not something that we are allowed to share ethically. But in general, a lot of Yenching scholars are very open to being contacted on social media like LinkedIn, what have you, and say, hey, I'm interested in applying. We're from the same country, or you have a research topic I saw that's interesting, or oh, we're alumni of the same school. And in general, most of them are quite happy to talk to you. I can't guarantee that everyone will answer, because they're busy, they're all doing their own things, but that's very, very good advice. If you have the chance to network with current or former Yenching scholars, whether through other alumni networks, what have you, that's a great bit of advice. Another, I would like to sort of add to that by saying, go to our website. Do your research on the structure of the program, and specifically look at the profiles of current Yenching scholars that are publicly available on the website. I want you to do that so you can get a sense of the real diversity of the program. And I don't mean cultural or regional or national diversity. I mean academic backgrounds, professional experience, motivations for applying, what they're doing here. You can get a sense that people really, there isn't one single profile of a successful applicant to the program. And I would hope that by looking at all the different paths people took to get into the program, I hope that will build your confidence and will let you know that, put your best foot forward. Let us know who you are and what you're really interested in doing here. Grad school applications are hard. It can be a intellectually and sometimes emotionally taxing process. But it's really good for self-reflection. And the final bit of advice on that is, you don't have to do this alone. I recommend that if you still are in contact with academic mentors, perhaps your letter writers, those who are writing the letters of recommendation, if you have friends who have applied to other graduate programs, share your application materials with them if they're willing to look. Ask for advice. Seek out counsel from friends and colleagues or mentors whom you respect. That can be a really helpful way of approaching it. Okay, I don't have anything else except looking at questions. Kok, Nan, and Aki, are there any sort of final things you'd like to say as a conclusion? You don't have to, but if there's, okay. All right, well, we have only one question right now in the Q&A. So if someone else has a question, please feel free to type it into the Q&A now, or you can even sort of digitally raise your hand and we can turn on your microphone. So this question is specific to scholars or applicants from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. When will the application deadlines for both YCA portal and PKU graduate admissions for HMT applicants be released? Approximately around what time are the deadlines? Specifically for the YCA portal, will the deadline for HMT applicants be later or earlier than that of international applicants? Thank you. Okay. So lots of questions in here. HMT applicants are only required to submit their application by the time of the Peking University Graduate School application deadline for HMT applicants. That deadline has not been announced yet. We don't know when it will be announced, but in general, it's around early January, early to mid-January sometimes. We don't know exactly when that's coming down the line, but we will update our website immediately as soon as we get that information from the Peking University Graduate School. So you don't have to submit until the PKU deadline. However, I suggest that you submit your Yenching Academy application earlier than that. A little bit, I suggest you do it. This is not a requirement, but it is, I think it won't hurt you to submit your Yenching Academy application a little bit earlier than the PKU application. That's simply a suggestion, however. Now, what this means, in general, the admissions process after the application deadline is as follows. We have several weeks of intensely reviewing the so-called paper applications, or the digital applications. We review them, and then we have essentially two periods of admission interviews. We try to get as many admission interviews done before we break for winter break, Chinese Lunar New Year. So that's generally going to be about 2 or 3 weeks of daily interviews in late December into early January. We then send out a round of offers after reviewing those interview performances, but we also have another period of interviews that take place after we come back from winter break, so generally in early March. This is not, a ranking system. This is not you do 2 interviews. It's that simply because of the deadlines that we were required to set by Peking University, and then the long winter break at all Chinese universities, we simply can't fit everything in January. Now, because the PKU application deadline for Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwanese applicants is set in early to mid-January, we cannot interview HMT applicants until after the winter break, because PKU also has time and needs time to review the application materials that 8 so-called HMT applicants submit. So that's a little bit of information about the post application submission admissions process. We have a question asking if YCA notifies applicants whether or not the admission office has received the academic transcript from the applicant. Can someone from the admissions office type that answer for me? Or if someone at the Yenching Academy wants to turn on their microphone and answer that, we have the answer being typed in there right now. So please hold on for your answer. Okay. Does anyone have their digital hands raised? No, it doesn't look like it. Okay, well, unless we see another question coming in, we will obviously let my colleagues in admissions type this answer before we end it. But I think we are about at the end of today's end of today's open information session about YCA. I'd like to give a sincere thanks to our Yenching alumni who joined us today, taking time out of their busy schedules. Especially, everyone's contribution was equally wonderful, but I think Nan has the worst time zone and the worst time zone difference to be joining us. So we really, really appreciate you taking time out of your schedules and staying up really late or getting up really, really early. So thank you all very much for joining us. It's good to see some of you again, some of you for the first time. To everyone who is considering applying, thanks for your interest in the Yenching Academy. We hope to see your applications coming in a couple of months, and best of luck to you all. Thank you.